Jesus taught a system of logical reasoning. Murdo MacDonald-Bayne. Jesus taught us a definite system of logical reasoning, which would produce in us divine inspiration and the experience in the mode of action through which God finds expression through the individual. He taught that God and the individual are one, impossible of separation. The Father and I are one, and this was the perfect expression of the individual who realized it, and what keeps us from enjoying it is simply our ignorance of this fact. Our ignorance of this truth keeps us in bondage to all sorts of limitations. If we live in our past experiences and fear the future, we will never know the eternal present, which is now and always will be now. The great truth that we must see and realize, not just as a mental concept but as a living reality, is that the divine mind makes things by becoming these things. Then it follows that divine mind must become the individual, for it cannot be other than its own natural expression. In the individual and through the individual, the divine is pressing forward into fuller and fuller expression of itself, therefore becomes fuller and fuller in the life of the individual who realizes it. And anything that limits the expression of the divine nature in the individual must also be retarding the progress of the individual, and this retarding progress can only come about by the individual who is ignorant of the great truth that sets you free, the individual being the universal in individuality. The question that rises in the mind of many is, how can this great truth become a reality? How can it be acquired? The way is so simple that it baffles most, and the way is that we have only to fully realize it by continuous realization. Now some will exclaim that it is beyond their comprehension, and if they did comprehend it, it was far beyond the quality of their faith. Yet it is through this understanding that our faith grows. We take for granted the life principle working through our physical organism. We trust nature's working laws, but when we learn the truth the Master taught, we will use our inherent powers by assuming them to be as natural as any other. The infinite to be infinite must include all. There cannot be any outside. All must be in the infinite, and all must be infinite. Every particle of substance we see or feel and that which is beyond our sight and touch must be infinite in nature. Therefore there is not one particle of the universe, not one particle of substance, that can be destroyed. It may change its form, and in so doing, we, being ignorant of the law of transition, changing from one form to another, call this death and decay and many other names. But science has proved to us that all matter is energy and has an atomic base and is indestructible in nature. Solids may turn to fluids, fluids may turn to vapor, and vapor to the ether of space, yet the same base that made solid matter still remains, and this fills boundless space. Only the vibration is changed. Therefore the life consciousness, or infinite, which becomes all forms, is eternal in nature, expressing itself in a variety of forms. Then we realize that the individual consciousness can be none other than the infinite consciousness itself individualized. That is why you and I are indestructible. Our consciousness will remain to unfold in the eternal infinite being by giving greater and fuller expression to the infinite life as we realize it more and more. Jesus taught in parables, as it was impossible to unveil the truth to the masses. Although he taught his disciples the inner working of the laws, yet he told them that the real significance of what he taught would be revealed by the Spirit within themselves. The time would come when the inner meaning of his words would dawn upon them, and so it is with us, and when this happens we wonder why we did not discern his true meaning long ago. The trouble is that most people cling to their experiences and disregard the truth of their being, with the result that they ignorantly use the creative power to produce more and more negative experiences and then rebel, not knowing that they themselves are the creators. This discovery cannot be made for us, we must find it ourselves. This is shown clearly in the parable of the prodigal son. The state of sonship had never altered for either of the two brothers, but in different ways they each missed the true position as sons. One limited himself by separating off a particular share of the father's goods for himself, and because he accepted his portion as a limited share instead of the whole, his share was speedily exhausted, leaving him in misery and want. He went off on his own into the wilderness of his intellect and lost sight of the Father who was his very life and substance. The other brother limited himself by supposing that he had no power to draw upon his father's stores, but must wait until some specific occasion arose so that he may ask permission to do so, not realizing that it was his inherent right to partake of all that he needed, and it was the Father's pleasure to give all that is mine is thine. The younger son took up the false idea of independence, thinking that he could do well on his own, while the other, although staying in the father's house, thought he had no independence at all. The younger son finds his dependence on his own resources fail him miserably, so he returns to find that he still has a position of honor and is capable of receiving all in the father's house. The other son, rebuked by the simple words, "All that is mine is thine, why wait for me to give you what is yours already?" You see, it is impossible to make a more clear statement of the relations between the universal and the individual mind. Both are interlocked together and are impossible of separation. The universal gives rise to the individual and the individual expression to the universal. Therefore, the individual acting universal can draw whatever the individual requires, but before this can be done, the true relationship must be realized. This is the birthright given to us by our Father. We live in the Father, and there can be no other home, for He is infinite, and the only way the Father can express Himself through us is our awareness of the Father united in us, and whatever we ask, the Father will provide. But this law of recognition must be maintained against all doubt or against disappointment, for the Father's ways are not ours. He knows best, and the way is found when we hold on. What man is there of you when, if his son asks bread, will give him a serpent? If ye then, being ignorant, know how to give good things unto your children, how much shall your Father which is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? We now see clearly the simple fact that the only possible action of the universal mind or life principle must be to always press upon us a fuller and fuller expression of itself in strict accordance with the condition each individual provides for its manifestation. When we realize that the foundation of his expression rests in a harmonious state of mind, we can easily grasp the condition we have to maintain so that this expression shall be complete. If there are conditions in your life that prevent this true expression, discern them quietly, do not struggle with them, but see that they can have no place in the scheme of things. You will find very soon that fear, anger, jealousy, possessiveness, anxiety, sickness, and want, all these things will die at the roots, because you will no longer feed them. When we begin to express from moment to moment through our doing, we will be giving expression to that life which is behind all things, which is impersonal in nature, and thus we can use it for any purpose of our individual needs. But we can only do this by abiding in the Father's house and conforming to the law of that house, which is love. There can be no envy or jealousy in the Father's house, no antagonisms, no differing creeds. All are of the one family, feasting at the Father's table, loving one another. Therefore, love is the very thing that puts us in possession of this limitless power of drawing from the infinite source, which is love itself. Ye have heard it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemies. But I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you, do good unto them that despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be children of your Father which is in heaven. We are all children of the same family, recognizing one Father, Mother, God. We are no longer limited by creeds and orthodoxy and all sorts of conditions imposed upon us by ourselves and others. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. So as soon as we are enlightened, as the elder brother was, that there is no other restriction except the law of love, we enter into the house of the Lord and join in the festival of everlasting joy. This is the teaching of the great Master, who left us a legacy. No treasure is like unto it. Benediction. O divine presence, unite our hearts with thine to rest in thee forever. Teach us to hold ourselves open to thy divine expression. Let the flame of thy love in our hearts soar triumphantly above the din of social problems and differing creeds, until the light of thy love has swallowed up everything. May I see myself always one with thee. I pray thee I may behold thy love in others, and in the light of that great love may I behold thy unveiled face. Peace be with you. Yours sincerely, 𝗦 MacDonald-Bayne.